All right, time to spend some obols. Wait, where are the ancestrals?
Oh, they're here.
But which items?
All of them.
Wait, really?
Always has been, too.
Ladies, gentlemen, and Harajam of all ages, patch 1.03 dropped yesterday evening, and it was an absolutely wonderful, massive patch. It buffed a lot of things for different classes, some buffs more meaningful than others, of course, but simply buffs across the board, so it's not really a thing to complain about, honestly. Not a single nerf, and on top of that, it has made Nightmare Dungeon farming feel genuinely quite good as an actual experience farm method. This was due to a number of changes in the patch, but given that there was a whole section in said patch related to gameplay adjustments, in which not a single actual numerical value was given to us, I thought I'd do some testing myself and let you know just how much better things are now. We'll go over just how big the experience buff is to Nightmare Dungeons, what's up with the experience reward from Helltide chests apparently, how big the Whispers of the Dead XP reward has gotten, what it means by the holdout style event within dungeons, changes made to the roaming Helltide boss assassin bug dude Kixarth, and we'll talk a bit about the Nightmare Dungeon teleporting and weekly cash level requirement removal too. Before that though, this actually went under the radar in the patch as it was actually listed as a bug fix. If you go to the Obol Vendor, you'll notice that the items in the list no longer have sacred or ancestral tags on any of them at any kind. Since launch, the community has seen these visuals at the vendor and just ran with the assumption that if a category says it is sacred, then it will drop better gear if you purchase that specific item. If it says that it's ancestral, it's even better than sacred, obviously. That would make sense given the visuals that we were given, right? Especially given the items that had the different glows would actually rotate every hour, almost like you had to look for the right time to spend your obols on different items. But this is no longer lit up, and the reason for that is because it never made any difference at all. Apparently this visual being on the Obol Vendor was a straight up bug. It always has been, and every item has the same chances when you gamble for them, and they always have. This is sort of crazy to me. Actually, it's quite crazy to me. I have often saved my own obols for when the item I want lines up and has that ancestral glow, so this changes everything with this vendor, and that was just a bug fix. It was a thing that's been there since launch, and what's crazy to me, I'll be real with you, is I'm amazed I didn't know about this before the game went live. Surely somebody clicked on the Obol Vendor, right? Past that though, let's dive into probably the biggest topic of today, Nightmare Dungeons. They buffed the experience reward for finishing a Nightmare Dungeon, and they buffed the experience for killing monsters in Nightmare Dungeons as well. From my testing so far across the board, this seems to be about an 80% boost to both the completion reward and the monster experience, which is absolutely massive. 80%, that is nearly double. That makes Nightmare Dungeons far and away the best experience farm method in the game now. Gone are the old days of blind burrows, normal dungeon spamming. Now we have the days of hoping that you have a blind burrows sigil instead. But even then, any Nightmare Dungeon is now more efficient to run than anything that isn't a Nightmare Dungeon, even blind burrows spam, which is just amazing to say out loud. They have completely, properly incentivized running Nightmare Dungeons as the main grind activity of endgame, and it not only feels good on a moment-to-moment basis. I managed to level from 87 to 88 on my Druid in around an hour just running some dungeons with Josh and Hollow from the channel, but it's so impactful on the health of the game as well, realistically. This completely brings back variety in the grind of the endgame, as now instead of running one dungeon back to back over and over, you can just run your sigils. Whichever one is applicable, go from one dungeon to the next, experiencing different things back to back, just get on it. Especially because of the secondary change to Nightmare Dungeons, which is now when you pop a Nightmare sigil, you can actually teleport right to the dungeon using the symbol on your map exactly like a waypoint. This cuts out the travel time, and that is massive, even if you do still have to enter it when you get there. Maybe they could change that in a future update, just make teleporting to it put you right into the dungeon, because it is sort of weird right now to teleport to a dungeon, but then still have to walk into it, because there's the extra loading screen and everything like that. But for now, I am exceedingly happy just with the ability to teleport to the place in general. That said, 80% buff to monster experience and completion reward. What does that actually look like? For my characters, I clear quickly because they're both on effective clearing builds. Alderwood took me about 2 minutes and gave me an insane 1 million experience, so if you went at that speed and only had Alderwood Nightmare Sigils, you could easily surpass 30 million experience per hour, which is nuts. I did Champion's Demise, which was a good one a while ago, but then it was nerfed, but now Champion's Demise gave me 2 million experience experience. Of course, it took me a lot longer than 2 minutes, but 2 million experience from a single dungeon is silly, especially now because of the teleporting system. There's just no need to travel at all, right? How about blind burrows, I hear you asking? That, as a nightmare dungeon in this patch, is worth 1.5 million experience, which is insane. I completed that in about 2.5 minutes on the same build, and that's about 37.5 million experience per hour if you just were able to run that back to back if you just had blind burrow sigils. That said, I know there are even builds like Waxing Gibbous Druids that can clear blind burrows in 2 minutes flat, at which point it would be upwards of 45 million experience per hour, and part of this is because they've removed the restriction on XP gain increase from enemies being above you in level. Before, the maximum increase that you'd get from higher level enemies was 25%. If they were 3 levels above you, you'd get a 25% increase. If they were 20 levels above you, you get a 25% increase if they were 3 levels above you. Now, that seems to actually scale properly, even past that, so if you do a really high tier sigil, you'll get even more XP than this. That said, of course, the most efficient way to do it, because of the way that it's laid out, is still to do the dungeons that you can complete the quickest, because the XP bonus isn't quite enough compared to the actual just general XP increase of the monsters within. So just do the sigils that you can do efficiently. 3 levels above you is still plenty doable and gives you the best general XP per time ratio. Insanely higher than the previous experience farms before the patch, so to put it simply, experience has gotten an insane buff. Anyone who is feeling like leveling past 80 was a bit of a chore, it just isn't now. 80% buff, that's nuts for everyone. All of that to say, get in nightmare dungeons now. There is no better time. It has never been better before, and well, I mean, it could get better in the future, but we can't think about that. Get in there. Aside from that, then, they boosted the XP from opening Helltide chests. I'll be the first one to say I had no idea that opening a Helltide chest even gave you experience. The amount from it before must have been so tiny that it never even clicked in my little mouse brain that I had gained anything, but now that we have been explicitly told that is the case, I of course went out and tested this in a couple of Helltides. A 75 cost chest, which is any of the armor-based chests, and also the ring chest, will let you 39,000 experience. That's not bad, it's not great, but it's a nice bonus, right? A 150 cost chest, which is a two-handed weapon, will net you 120,000 experience, which is actually pretty good, especially when you consider it as double the price of a 75 cost chest, but triple the experience reward. Then we have everyone's favorite, the mystery chest, which costs 175 cinders to open, and this is worth 39,000 experience again. It turns out that they realized that the mystery chest was already the most rewarding one, so its actual XP gift to you is pretty tiny comparatively to its cost.
Disappointed!
All in all, those rewards mean that Helltide is still not at all worth farming if you're specifically looking for experience. If you want experience, go to Nightmare Dungeons. But that is still a nice little bonus reward that you will get when you do farm Helltide for other purposes anyways, like Forgotten Souls for both upgrading and enchanting your gear, as well as Fiend Roses, or even just legendaries in general, which Helltide is pretty good for. On which note, they also buffed the Helltide roaming boss Kixart the Assassin, making him spawn more frequently and drop higher loot. I was only able to find him once in the 2 Helltides that I did, but when I did and I killed him, he did drop me a legendary item. He still gives barely any cinders at all, honestly, so it's a time investment as far as Helltide reward. It's a bit rough, but the legendary drop was nice to have. Given I only killed him once, I don't know if that is consistent by any means, but I hadn't gotten the legendary from him any of the times that I've killed him prior to this, and I've killed him quite a few times, so that's probably the increased loot table for this enemy making that happen. The next point was increased rewarded experience for Whisper completion. This isn't the end hand-in of Whispers of the Dead, it is the individual tasks that give you favor towards the bigger one. Things like doing certain dungeons, doing the world boss, doing a Legion event, the random sellers, all the things like that. Generally, Whispers of the Dead dies down a lot as an activity that you actually want to aim to complete once you can comfortably do Nightmare Dungeons. Instead, it becomes something that just happens in the background, then you hand it in when you do it. They're clearly trying to bump it back up a little bit though, and for beating the world boss, which is a 5 favor Whisper task, I got 73,000 experience as a completion reward. So again, this is going to be nowhere close to what Nightmare Dungeons actually are and what they can give you, but it does buff earlier game experience gain quite a lot, and the sort of passive gain that you get for just completing a random Whisper by accident in the late game. Many people seem to be forgetting that Season 1 isn't crazy far away though, so all of the changes that they are making, both with balancing to lower scaled class abilities in the actual class balancing section, and to experience that isn't Nightmare Dungeons themselves, are of course going to make a fairly big difference for us in the long run. We're we're all going to be level 1 again someday, right? Aside from this, there was actually a reason that I did a world boss specifically, and that was to show you actually in-game that the Grand Cash weekly reward for killing each world boss now genuinely has no level requirement at all. No more level 80 boxes from World Tier 4, open them whenever you please. A simple change, but a change that people really wanted. We've got 2 items left on the agenda then. They claim to have fixed an issue where no experience was rewarded for completing holdout style events that can occur after finishing dungeon objectives. This sadly does not mean what I thought it would and what I wanted it to deep in my heart. I was hoping that this was referring to the intermission sections in dungeons where you complete an objective and then you walk into a room, 50 enemies spawn, it gives you like a little tiny thing to do, maybe you have to click on some levers or something, but those give no experience at all. Absolutely zero. None of the monsters give experience, completing the event doesn't give you experience, and they drop no loot, which is just something, it's like the weirdest game design decision to me. I mean, if you're going to make me do something to progress, you need to make it give me something at least. You need to make it feel like it's worth my time even slightly, but zero reward makes it feel, well, unrewarding. That said, what this did fix is things like at the end of some slay all enemies objectives, when a powerful elite spawns that you then have to kill, just little things like that now give experience when they weren't doing it every time before. Nothing quite as major as making intermissions worth it, sadly. Finally then, this doesn't affect this current patch, but they gave us a little note saying that they are currently working to increase both smaller monster and elite monster density in endgame, and plan to introduce this early in Season 1. This has been one of the larger complaints about the game, honestly. Just monster density as a whole. It feels way more engaging as a player to plow through 30 enemies in a corridor than 10 sparsely spaced guys. Like if you were walking through a narrow path, it shouldn't be enemies laid out laxly, one at a time like a set of dominoes spaced out so that when they die they'll just land on their one friend, who then will land on their one friend, etc. It should just be filled to the brim with things to kill. That is what feels good, genuinely, in a game like this. That's it then, everyone. That's everything. The numbers breakdown of all of the gameplay adjustment changes that they made in the patch. Honestly, they're all really nice to see. It doesn't fix some of the larger mechanical issues with the game that we do want fixed, let's be honest, but it's a pretty good start, especially when what they've done with Nightmare Dungeons has had the effect that it has. Even more so if they are transparently telling us that they plan to increase monster density in the near future, because that is the main thing that feels lacking to me for sure as far as general enjoyment of content. Teleporting to Nightmare Dungeons as well is just a major win for us. Again, I wish that we didn't have to then walk in after we teleport and get a bonus loading screen just for fun, but that is a minor gripe in comparison to the amount of good that this system gives us and how fast it was added to the game after they brought it up. That is massive for us. Big win for the player base today, big wins all around. I hope you've all enjoyed this breakdown and numerical summary then, getting into the nitty-gritty numbers of it all. Like if you liked the video, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.